Hi, my name is Ravi. Welcome to my channel, Payment Talks. Welcome back to part 2 of 4-part video series on ISO 20022 payment lifecycle flows. Not every payment sails through cleanly. In this video, you will see exactly where a cross-border payment can get rejected, how the money actually finds its way back to the payer once that happens, and whether you can really pull a payment back once it has already left the bank. There are two completely different ways to try that, and only one of them closes the real timing gap than the other. Quick refresher if you are joining from video 1. Every flow in this series runs on the same 7 actors: a debtor and a creditor, their two banks, and two correspondent banks connecting them when those banks don't hold accounts with each other directly, sitting alongside a payment market infrastructure that settles funds quietly in the background. Red arrows are mandatory for the scenario on screen, black arrows are optional, and the GPA tracker only gets updated once an agent has finished its own job, meaning it has acknowledged what it received and forwarded it onward. One more rule matters more than any other in this episode. A bank books its accounting entry on its own network acknowledgement, never on a counterparty's confirmation. Hold on to that. It explains almost everything you are about to see. In this video, first we see the non-STP scenario message flows and understand when a bank rejects versus when a bank returns a payment. Same cast as before: Northwind Traders, Meridian Bank, Atlas Bank, Harbor Bank, and Crestline Bank with Ridgeline as creditor. This time, we are tracking three separate points where this payment could get turned away. The first and simplest rejection point: Northwind sends its instruction pay no one to Meridian. Meridian simply declines it, replying with pay no to status code RJCT. That's it. The flow ends right there. Please note few points here. The pay no to is in red color, indicating it is mandatory flow. CBPR mandates the response for any negative scenarios. Here, paint 2 with RJCT status for negative scenario must be sent even though paint 2 positive cases are optional as we saw in STP scenarios. Also, notice what didn't happen here. Because packset was never generated, this payment never actually touched the network. There's nothing for the GPI tracker to have any record of payment at all. Also, these exchange of messages that happened between Meridian and Northwind are in between customer to bank space. So, both the instruction and response are pain messages. Now, say Meridian accepts the instruction instead. It acknowledges the payment and sends the PayNo2. It processes and sends Paxo8 to Atlas Bank, the actual interbank payment. And almost in the same breath, it notifies Northwind that the account has been debited using the CAM254 or any other retail mode of SMS, email, or push notification. Notice the timing. Meridian does this before it has any idea whether the payment will actually succeed further down the chain. Why this matters? This is the same booking rule from video 1, but the stakes are higher now. Meridian has already told the customer their money moved, and it hasn't confirmed anything downstream yet. If this payment fails later, that early notice is exactly why a reversal has to happen. Here is the mechanic you will see at every rejection point in this video. If Atlas rejects the payment, it responds one of two ways: either a PAX2 with status RJCT or a PAX4 a payment return. One or the other, never both. Please notice the color of the arrows. In negative scenarios, responding back to the previous agent is mandatory. Either it is reject or return. Which one happens is decided entirely by the bilateral relationship between Atlas and Meridian, not by any fixed rule in the standard. In other words, whether settlement between Meridian and Atlas is finished by the time Atlas takes the decision. Listen carefully here. Settlement completion by the time Atlas takes decision to inform the Meridian. We will discuss in detail about this settlement concept when we discuss the INDA and INGA settlement methods in Paxo 8 series. For now, remember this trick. If settlement, that is value movement during payment, is not completed by the time Atlas makes the decision, then simply rejecting the payment using PAX2 RJCT is sufficient. If settlement, the value movement, is completed by the time Atlas moves the decision, then the funds or value have to be returned using the PAX4 return message. This concept can be extended between any banks or even in the case of domestic clearing. In domestic clearing, settlement complete at clearing. That's why in domestic clearing, the bank rejecting the payment always sends the packs for return to sending bank via the clearing itself and not packs 2. Hope this fundamental is clear. Atlas reports this to the GPA tracker as RJCT, not ACSP, because this is terminal. The payment isn't in progress anymore. It's over. This step will happen irrespective of whether Atlas sent packs to reject as shown in the steps A or when Atlas sent packs for return as shown in steps B. Meridian now has to undo what it already booked. It will send paint to with status RGCT to inform the corporate about the rejected payment status along with the reason code. Meridian also reverses the debit, sends CAMT 54 reversal credit notice to inform funds are credited back to Northwind. That closes this branch of the flow. If Atlas doesn't reject, the payment keeps moving. It forwards Paxaid to Harbor and reports ACSP, accepted and in progress, only after it has acknowledged and forwarded. Harbor does the same thing on its own leg, forwarding to Crestline and reporting ACSP in turn. We saw all these steps in detail in video 1 STP flow. The payment has one more chance to be rejected at creditor agent Crestline. We are focusing on flows and not the reasons of rejection. At Crestline, the exact same either or logic applies. Either PAX2 with RJCT or PAX4, governed this time by the relationship between Harbor and Crestline. Crestline reports RJCT to the tracker, and that status gets broadcast back to every single upstream agent in the chain at once. Everyone now knows this payment has failed. Here is the detail that trips people up. So let's take this slowly. If Crestline sent its rejection as a direct PAX4, a real value return, Harbor's job is simple. It just relays that return backward, unchanged. But if Crestline only sent a status rejection, there is no value return yet. Harbor itself has to originate a brand new PAX4. Can you guess why? Listen this carefully. Harbor has to send the PAX4 in either case because Harbor is the one holding funds currently. For the payment, it already forwarded to Crestline at this step, whether it received the rejection or return. And those funds need to be unwound. Same ending, two very different starting points. As this PAX4 is also a value message, the receiving bank will send optional PAX2 to acknowledge. Another important point here is that though PAX4 is a value message, the bank does not trigger the tracker update for PAX4 sent. The rationale and GPA rule is that the tracker already knows the payment is rejected and is in return journey, and it places the UTR in return scenario. As tracker has the complete details from the onward payment, it simply tracks the payment in the network for the return journey. The banks need not explicitly inform tracker again for the PAX4 returns. Whichever way that return got started, from here it's a straightforward relay. It moves from Harbor to Atlas to Meridian. And at each hop, the receiving bank can optionally acknowledge it with PAX2. Once the return reaches Meridian, it finishes the job with Northwind. Paint 2 with status RJCT, and a CAMT54 reversal credit notice or its equivalent SMS or email, and eventually a CAMT statement entry showing the reversal. The loop is closed. So here's the rule that just ran underneath all three rejection points. A rejection is always either a status message or a value return, never both, at every single hop. People assume a rejected payment produces both a status message and a return, one confirming the failure and one moving the money back. It never does. This is the trap. It's always one or the other, decided bilaterally at that specific hop based on the fund's settlement status. Now we move on to the cancellations. Now, a different question. What if nothing is wrong with the payment, but Northwind simply wants it stopped? Say this payment has already reached Harbor Bank. The position doesn't actually matter. The payment could be sitting anywhere in the chain, and the mechanics you are about to see stay exactly the same. The payment is at Harbor Bank. The same has been shown here after steps 1, 2, and 3. Northwind asks Meridian to cancel the payment using CAMT 55. Meridian sends back an interim response CAMT 29 coded PDCR, meaning pending, still deciding, often carrying a reason like RQDA, debit authority requested, etc. This is just an interim acknowledgement that the case is open. It is not the final answer. The traditional route is called serial cancellation, and it travels exactly the way you would expect, hop by hop, same as payment route. Meridian forwards the request as CAMT 56 to Atlas, and Atlas forwards it on to Harbor, where the payment currently happens to sit. Interim PDCR responses of CAMT 29 can travel back at each of these hops too. Only one bank actually gets to make the real call, and that's whichever agent is physically holding the payment when the request arrives. Here, that's Harbor. It decides CNCL cancelled or RJCR cancellation rejected, and that decision travels back in CAMT 29, hop by hop, all the way to Northwind. The decision outcome determines everything from here. If it's CNCL, the investigation is done and the banks agree to return the funds. If funds already moved, a payment return still has to follow using the exact same either or mechanics we just walked through in the rejection section. If it's RJCR, none of that happens. RJCR means it is rejecting the cancellation request, which means it cannot return back the payment funds. The original payment simply continues on to Crestline as if the cancellation request never came in. In either cases, the response CAMT29 carries the decision information back. There's a faster path called SRP, stop and recall payment, which bypasses the hop by hop route and directly sends the cancellation to the bank which currently holds the payment as shown here. Atlas skipped. Let's see how this happens. As we saw, the payment reached to Harbor and Northwind requested for a cancellation which was acknowledged by the Meridian Bank. Instead of relaying hop by hop, Meridian sends CAMT 56 straight to the GPA tracker. The tracker already knows exactly which agent is holding the payment. So it routes the request directly there, skipping every hop in between, and it places a network level hold at the same time. So even if the agent, Harbor in this case, mistakenly forwards the payment before processing the recall message of CAMT 56, the network itself steps in and stops the payment. Harbor now takes the decision, which is either CNCL or RJCR. This response travels in the CAMT29 message back to tracker. tracker now send this information back to the original sender of the request, Meridian in this case. Please note that in SRP, the communication is always via the tracker only. Just like we saw in the serial cancellation case, when the harbor agrees cancellation as CNCL and to return the fund, then it will trigger the funds return as shown. Please note, the cancellation messages are via the tracker, but the funds travel exactly in the reverse way of the original payment, which is hop by hop as shown. In case Harbor rejects the cancellation request as RJCR and responds, the tracker will remove the hold that it placed on the payment, and the payment moves forward normally to Crestline. Why bother building a second path at all? Because serial cancellation has a real structural problem. A CAMT 56 has to physically travel hop by hop, and by the time it arrives, the payment might already have moved past that agent. SRP closes that gap two ways: direct routing and a network enforced stop. It isn't mandated today, but Swift is moving towards requiring it. One last thing before we wrap up, because this mix up catches almost everyone the first time. CAMT29 has its own codes: CNCL, PDCR, and RJCR, describing the outcome of a cancellation investigation. The GPI tracker has a completely separate set of codes: ACSP, ACCC, and RJCT, describing overall payment progress. They look conceptually parallel, but they are not interchangeable. Keep them in separate boxes in your head. Everything in this video, every rejection point and both cancellation paths rests on one rule from video 1. The bank posts on its own network acknowledgement, never on counterparty's confirmation. That single discipline is exactly why a reversal mechanism has to exist at all. That's every way a payment can be rejected, returned, or pulled back mid flight. Next time, we look at what changes when the payer itself is a bank and the two different ways cover funds actually move. Find the full guide on paymenttalks.com and subscribe so you don't miss video 3. Until then, keep smiling and keep learning. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share for more such interesting topics on payments.